grace of marriage and all that is holy, Tim and I are coming up on our 8-year anniversary this Saturday. I don't understand where those 8 years went. When I think about it, it went by quick, but it also went by slow. Time is just, it's a weird thing. In honor of our anniversary, I thought I'd just talk about how we got married. I never really told that story on camera before. Tim and I talked about this on the phone a little while ago, and we were like, let's do a video about our wedding. I kept referring to it as an elopement, but then I kept retracting that and saying, was it really an elopement? Did we elope? Every time I said it, it felt wrong. It's debatable. You could call it an elopement, or you could just call it secretly getting married. But the definition of elope is to run away secretly in order to get married. But in my mind, when I think of eloping, I think of two people who are just like, let's go get married, and they're in Vegas, and they just get in the car and go, and then boom, they're married. For us, it was a little bit different. He didn't pop the question. There was no engagement party. There was no engagement ring. There was no process, I guess you could say. Looking back, as impulsive as that decision was, I think it was also kind of adult-like of us to sit there and have this conversation and make these plans in such a methodical way. I think the questions that we hear the most from people are, how did you do it in such a short amount of time? And would you do it again? So today I thought that I would attempt to answer those questions and just kind of explain why we got secretly married and why I would do it again in half a heartbeat. So let's go back in time to 2013. We owned our house where we lived. It was in my name. We'd been living there for about 2 years. This was the first deployment that was coming up for us when we were together as a real couple. So in April, they had a yellow ribbon event for the families of all the service members that were getting deployed. They held it at a hotel in St. Louis where we lived, and everybody went to this hotel for a weekend, and there were seminars and just classes on relationships and just all these different things that are involved at a yellow ribbon event. So we went to that. Part of that process involves the soldier sitting down and making an appointment with JAG to go over all kinds of just legal questions and things like that. So Tim had his appointment, and one thing to know about the military is there is no gray area. It's abort mission or all clear. So in this appointment, they straight up asked him, are you married? Do you have kids, dependents, that kind of thing? Tim said no. So like I said, remember, we'd been living together for 2 years at this point. He had to talk about that with JAG, and so they straight up asked him point blank, why aren't you married? And if you can imagine Tim's face when he was asked that question, I'm sure it just turned completely white because he didn't know what to say. But that's just how it is. You better be prepared with an answer in the military. And so I wasn't in that appointment, obviously. That's just for the soldier. And so I don't know what he said. But in the conversations that we had later following that event, he explained to me that it was at that moment that he started to really think about our future together, whether I was the one or whether, he thought that he could see himself with me for the rest of his life. I think we left that event with a lot of questions in our mind and a lot of feelings, and we just had a lot to talk about after that. We weren't married, so there were a lot of things that we had to set up before the deployment that kind of drew lines in the sand, if you will. There's just a lot of things, life insurance, power of attorney, things like that if you're not married, it can be kind of difficult to navigate. And so fast forward to May of 2013, a month later, we were still pondering all of these questions and trying to decide what we were going to do when deployment came up in August. It was just a couple months away. So we were going through all of these planning stages and trying to get everything ready with the house and just set everything up so that whenever he was gone, he would be taken care of and I would be taken care of and everything would go smoothly. So we're talking about all of that stuff. We're sitting on the couch one night and we're just talking about everything that we went over at the yellow ribbon event. We were in love at that point. We had been in love for quite some time leading up to this point in our lives. We were talking about, what we wanted to do before Tim left, places Tim wanted to go before he left the country. He was going overseas to, I I think it was Iraq for that one. And one of the things that we had on our list was to go to Florida and see Tim's sister. We didn't have to plan that out too much. Like, we knew we were going, and we were just going to drive there and like stay with her. So it wasn't like a ton that we had to plan out, but we knew that that was going to be happening. As we started talking about those plans, it started to kind of snowball into a deeper conversation about what we wanted for our relationship, how we were going to trust each other during this year of separation, all those things. And what it came down to is we knew that we were the ones for each other. The methodical part of my brain was like, it just makes sense to get married. The emotional side of my brain was like, yes, he's the one, but this is forever, right? This is a big decision. We both love very strongly. We're very, very passionate people. We're both Leos. If you're into astrological things like that, we're both very much fire signs. I don't know who actually came out first and started talking about the M word, like marriage. I don't remember, and I really wish that I did. Not that it even matters, but we decided, just since we felt it so deeply in our hearts that we were gonna be together, that we were gonna get married eventually, that it just made sense to go ahead and do it before he left the country. I never really had a dream wedding in my mind as far as like what it would look like. A little bit of backstory. I don't have a father in my life, and I have never had a father in my life, and so that was never something in my mind where I thought I want him, I don't have a dad to walk me down the aisle. I don't have all of those like traditional things going for myself. I also don't come from a strongly religious family either. Not to say that I don't have my own beliefs, but as far as the church goes, that wasn't something that I ever saw myself requiring for my own wedding. Church weddings are beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, and I've been to several of them that really like get you here, But for me, I never saw myself getting married and walking down an aisle at a church. Instantly, my mind was like, let's get married on the beach. Why not? We don't need to find a church. We don't need all of those things. Let's get married on the beach. We're going to be at the beach already. We won't have to wear shoes, Like, it's perfect. That's where it all started, on that couch, in that conversation that we had. And I think the things that we talked about in that conversation on the couch that night meant more to me than any vow I could ever make, because it was at that moment that I knew he was committed to me. And in my mind, I already knew that this man was committed to our country. The little piece of my heart that didn't know how to trust anymore after all of these relationships in my past, I knew he was going to take care of my heart. I guess I do wish that we had had an engagement. I wish that we had that moment like you see on TV or you see on social media where the guy gets on one knee and asks the question and all of those things. But when I think back on the process of how we got to the point of us getting married, that conversation means more than anything to me, because that's when I knew I didn't have to worry anymore. I just didn't have to worry. Fast forward again to June. We made the arrangements. It just started happening like that. It was like, what are all the things, I'd never gotten married before. What are all the things you need to do when you get married? I had nothing planned in my mind, because this, again, we didn't have this like transitional period between asking the question and then like the wedding. So it was like, all right, give me all the wedding books, give me the Pinterest tips and all the things. And so that's what I did. We were both 27 at the time. We weren't making a ton of money, so it's not like we could go out and blow all this money on $2,000 dresses and whatever. We don't come from families with money, so it wasn't like we were going to inherit anything or be gifted large sums of money or anything like that. Also, we didn't tell anybody. Okay, so let me step back a minute. In the conversation that we had when we decided that we were going to get married, we talked about how that would look for us. And like I said, it wasn't going to be in a church. It was probably going to be on the beach. We had to ask ourselves who we wanted there, because with such short notice, we didn't want to put the pressure on our families to put that money out to come down to Florida. And I know a lot of them probably would, but it was a decision that I didn't want them to have to make. And it was also one of those things where, I don't know how to say this, but we wanted as little drama as possible, because what it comes down to in a marriage is you and your spouse, you and the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. And you don't want to look back on that day and think about the drama that happened leading up to you walking down the aisle, or who came and who didn't come, or what so-and-so said about the dress you asked them to wear, whatever the thing is. You don't want those things clouding your brain on that day. And so we just thought, let's do this under the radar. We'll come home, we'll tell everybody, because here's the thing. There was nobody to ask permission. Tim didn't have, he could have asked my mom's permission, but like there wasn't a dad. There was no traditional like, hey, Ashley's dad, do you care if I marry your daughter? That didn't have to happen. I already knew that Tim's family approved of me. We'll just say that. Tim didn't make great decisions on relationships leading up to me, and I didn't either, but I'm just gonna say, like, Tim's parents approved of me, right? So we didn't have to worry about that in our case. We went ahead with the plans, and we were like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna invite 2 people. My best friend, and then Tim's sister. We were already going to see her. She was already there. That's Tim's best friend. There's no doubt about that. These were the perfect people to be there. We knew we could trust them with our secret. I could see where if it were a longer period of time, it would be harder to keep that secret. But for us, it was 2 months. We had 2 months to make the plans and execute. And we were able to do that. And so we decided that once we did it, we completed the mission and we came home, that's when we would tell our friends and our family what we did. And just hope and pray that they were happy for us. And they were. Tim had a deployment to get through. He was leaving in August. So we were literally getting married and then he was out the door. He was leaving for a year. So it's not like we had time to come home and have this grand reception or anything like that. We had to wait a year. And so we decided that while he was gone, that would give us time and opportunity to make the plans for an actual celebration, for a reception, for the party part of the wedding, if you want, whatever you want to call it. And so that's what we did, and it gave me something to do while he was gone. It gave me something to plan and keep my mind off of things. Like I told you guys in the other video about deployments and being a champ and having something to do and making something, like this all ties into that. I've been doing this since our very first deployment. I'll link that video below if you haven't seen it, but that's essentially what I used the time for, just to plan the reception and book the venue. Mission Dream Day, I think is what I called it back then. June 1st is when I actually started looking for an officiant. I found a company, it was a husband and wife that did these beach weddings in Florida, in the Fort Walton Beach area. They would set up the arches with the floral arrangements on the beach and then do like the little arrangements in the sand and things like that. Again, we didn't have a ton of money to put into this, especially last minute, so I contacted them and I was like, hey, we just need the officiant. We need you to like do our wedding for us, whatever you want to call that. And so she was like, sure, we'll do that. And, normally we give a $25 discount to military families, but instead of that, my husband can like make this heart in the sand for you to stand in while you get married. And I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Like minimal, nothing too over the top. Like we couldn't have a more gorgeous background as it is. So like, what more do you need? That was the first thing we did. The second thing we did was find a photographer. I found one. It was probably on Pinterest or something like that, where they had the picture and then they linked it to the website. And I don't think that the company exists any longer. She may have stopped doing this, but it was called White Sands Photography. Contacted her, got a price. That worked out perfectly. I liked her work. I liked the way, like her vibe and like how she took her pictures. And she was great. She was absolutely great. So got her booked. Another thing that we decided that we wanted was a videographer. And I know this is super common now, but back in 2013, I think it was still like a very new and a very, it was an expense. And it was for us, certainly. However, with what we were planning on doing, this was the thing that I was going to splurge on because, again, it was a secret wedding, and so we weren't telling anybody. So the idea was Tim and I were going to write our vows on a piece of paper separately. We weren't going to look at them. We're going to write them down, roll them up together, and put them in this bottle we had to have the videographer to do that so that we could read the vows on camera individually and throw them in the ocean. That was part of our ceremony. The whole idea behind this was we'll wait a year for it to wash ashore or for Tim to come home, and then when we have our wedding reception, the video will be the first time that we hear each other's vows in the presence of our friends and family at this reception that we were hosting. And so that's what we did. But it went perfectly, exactly how I wanted it to. And again, that's the thing that I splurged on the most, I think, because that was the most important to me, just like documenting that day and just having something that I can always go back to in the future. Probably the most stressful thing about all of this was the dress, because I mean, if you're a woman, you know what it's like to try to find something that fits you perfectly, especially for your wedding day, right? But I had no time. I did not have time to go look for something and get fittings and get things hemmed and tucked and whatever. So I found a website where you take your own measurements and then you send in the measurements to the company. You pick the dress that you want out of, the pictures of their inventory online, and then they make it and they send it to you. It was a company overseas. It was affordable, so I took my measurements, I said a prayer, and I sent them off. And then I think it was literally 2 or 3 weeks later, the dress came in the mail. And I put it on, and I stood there in the mirror and I cried because it was perfect. Now, I say that because it was cheap, but for what we were doing at the beach, I did not want a $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 dress that was going to get damaged in the ocean. The mermaid style was very much my thing. I'll just show it to you real quick. So here it is. It's strapless. Had this little starfish on it around the waist, and then it kind of flares out with all these cascading ruffles. And the back is just very simple. Has a zipper. That was my dress. And then with that, I didn't have to wear shoes. Just went barefoot. It was the beach, so who needs shoes? The other thing I did is I took my girl and we went to Sephora at the mall and I got a makeup consultation. I told them that I was getting married on the beach. I needed waterproof everything. I needed the most heavy duty commercialized makeup that they could give me that was gonna stay on my face and not melt off. And they came through. I got the primer, I got the setting spray, and all of that. So after I figured out my makeup, I already knew I was going to do my own hair. I used a 3-barrel iron to kind of give it that mermaidy, crimpy, beachy wave. I did that myself. We had to book a hotel because while we were going to visit Tim's sister, she lived 2 hours away from the location that we were getting married at. So we had to book a hotel that was there, on the beach, so that I could get ready in the room and then, make my way down the sand. We booked the Hampton Inn in Fort Walton Beach. It was perfect. It was affordable. I think we got it was probably just a standard king-size room with an oceanfront view. That's all we needed. We weren't spending a ton of time there. And it was just me and my best friend getting ready in the room, so we didn't need a bridal suite and all that, hoopla. And then before we ever left for Florida, we had to figure out what we were going to do for wedding bands because, again, there was no engagement process. There was none of that. There was no savings. There was nothing. And so, this is funny to me because I think about this all the time when I think about our wedding. We didn't have a lot. We weren't making a lot. I had vacation fund piggy banks and I emptied those suckers, and me and Megan sat there at the bank and rolled that coin until we got $50 or something out of it. Took that, cashed in some scratch off lottery tickets that I had sitting on the counter somewhere in the kitchen. I took jewelry that old boyfriends had given me that I knew were worth a little bit, and I pawned that, got some cash for that. What else did we do? We had a garage sale, I think, a few months prior, and I had some cash saved up from that too. I pooled all that money together. We went right into Shane Co. in St. Louis, and I found a wedding band. I picked it out all myself. And then Tim came in and we got his too. That's what we used. We didn't have the big diamond or anything. That came later. That was something that again, like I would have liked to have had, but it didn't define our relationship, because I knew that what was going to come from this marriage was far more valuable. I knew that there was much more coming. That was pretty much all we did to prep for the wedding. Ooh, there was one more thing that I did. As a bride, you have to have a bouquet. I made one. I got on Pinterest again. I found some color palettes that I liked, and I wanted something bright and cheery and summery, and that, that's just who I am. I went to Hobby Lobby, got all these flowers, picked out all the colors, bundled them all up in this little bouquet, and wrapped it up in this raffia string, or whatever you want to call this. And that was that. For Tim, as far as what he wore, he had a pair of white shorts, so he wore white shorts from American Eagle. And we found him an orange shirt, like a button-up shirt from American Eagle that he wore. Like, we pulled this color and kind of found something close to that. And then I had my best friend wear a dress that was this color, and then Tim's sister also wore that color as well. So that was our wedding party look. That was our color palette, and that's kind of the inspiration for that. And this probably cost me anywhere from like $50 to $80, because they're like the nice flowers. They're not like the real cheap ones. So I did splurge a little bit on that. So we packed up the car, we drove down to Florida, we went to the courthouse, and we got our marriage license, and then we completed the mission. We got married. The beach was called Princess Beach, and it was like at 6:30 p.m. It was like right at sunset, or like the sun was setting just after we had finished the ceremony. It was the most heavenly, most magical setting that I could have ever pictured for my own wedding. Like, the spirit literally surrounded us in the waves in the ocean, and just the glow of the sun in the sky setting and turning all the clouds pink. Just like the warm white sand that we were standing in, it just kind of like, it just warmed my heart. If heaven was a moment, we were standing in it inside that sandy heart on the beach that day on July 31st. It was the most perfect feeling that I've ever had in my life. There was no drama. Everybody that was there wanted to be there. It was definitely one of my most proud moments in my life. The fact that I found somebody that I could trust and love me as much as I love them. And we both went into it wanting it more than anything. So would I do it again? Abso-freaking-lutely. Yes. Yes, I would. So if this is something that you're considering doing for yourself in your relationship, if you think that you're ready to take this step and go through with plans like this, I would recommend a couple things to you. When you're researching for your officiant, if you don't already have one and you're looking for somebody to do this for you, make sure that you really align with that person. I'm not going to get into the story about our officiant, but they turned out to be a not great person. They no longer do this. I snooped and I wanted to know if they were still in business doing this kind of thing, and they are not, as far as I can tell. And that's probably a good thing, because it was not a good situation. But they completed the service that we paid them for. There's nothing we can do about it now, and I am grateful that they were able to do that for us. But going back, I would do a little bit more research on who was going to be performing this wedding, because, now when I look back at these pictures and I see this person in them, I remember the nastiness, and I remember the awful conversations and emails that went on afterwards. So I would highly recommend maybe finding somebody that you know that could be ordained, or just really maybe trying to meet the person before going through with this, and just really know who this person is and make sure that they can speak to your love. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing that I wish I could change about this. But again, we can't. We got our marriage out of it, and it's okay. The second thing would be to minimize outside drama. And I think that that's really something that drives the decision for a lot of people to elope or to go get married in secret. It's just that they don't want to hear other people's opinions unless it's a positive opinion. And I get that. If you're feeling something strongly enough, then you should follow your heart. But at the same time, listen to your gut as well. You definitely don't want to be reckless with a decision like this. And I don't recommend this for a couple that hasn't been together for very long or doesn't truly know each other. Like I said, Tim and I had been together for quite some time before we made this decision, and so we were pretty concrete in our feelings. With that being said, you don't want to bring that drama with you to your ceremony, because just like the officiant, you don't want to look back on those pictures and that day and remember the drama. You want to remember the feeling, like the look in your partner's eyes when you're saying these vows to each other. You don't want to be thinking about so-and-so standing behind you, you know, giving you side eye, or like glaring across the beach or across the church at whoever. Like, that's not what a wedding is about, and you don't want that vibe on your special day. The third thing I would recommend is kind of odd, but for me, this is something that I've been doing aside from getting married. Just like, it's something it's allowed me to hold on to memories just in general. For me, scent triggers a lot of my memories, and I can smell something now that will take me back to when I was a little kid. And so anytime we go on vacation, I've been doing this for such a long time, I will take a new lotion or a new perfume or even a candle or something, like a new scent to me that I don't have any attachment to, and I'll take it and use it on that vacation. And then when I come home and I smell that again, it takes my brain back to that vacation and those memories. And so for my wedding day, I found this perfume. It's by Jennifer Aniston. I think it was from Kohl's. I don't know where else you get this, if it's online or whatever, but it has a very beachy scent. And so I love the beach. I love the ocean. It's part of who I am. And so I knew that I wanted something like this to remember my special day. And so I wore this on our wedding. Every time I smell this now, it takes me straight back to Princess Beach. I'm there as soon as I smell this. And I love that, because it's not a tangible thing, you know, like it's not a picture that I can look at, and it just triggers a different kind of memory for me. That's my recommendation. I would suggest maybe finding a lotion or a perfume or something that's scented that you can use, and this doesn't even have to be for a secret wedding or a elopement. This can be just for your wedding day in general. The very last thing that I would recommend is to document everything. And I say that because, as I mentioned, that is the one thing in this whole process that I splurged on. I spent the most money on our photographer and our videographer because I wanted to capture every single detail about this day, and I think they did a great job of doing that. And I'm so glad that we found the money to pay these people to do such a great job, because that is one of the most valuable things that I have. But that's pretty much, in a nutshell, how we got married and why we did it secretly. I would do it again, like I said. For the right couple, I would definitely recommend doing this. If this is something you're debating because you don't want to upset your parents, I challenge you to really think about your own feelings, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. But I mean, that's pretty much our story. That's what happened. So like, after we got married, we came back home from Florida. We had a barbecue at our house for all of our family and friends, like our close, like our moms and our, our best friends and everybody. And they all came over to the house, and we decided to take a group picture. We had everybody lined up in front of the garage, and then when they were about to take the picture, the garage door, it started going up. And then my Jeep was sitting in there, and on the back window, it had "Just Married" written on the window. And so everybody turned around like, why is the garage door opening? And then they saw "Just Married," and then they were like, wait, you got married? And that's how we told everybody. And I think it was like everybody's reactions, I will never forget. Like, there was screaming, there was crying, there was what? There was like all the things. That's one of my favorite memories about the whole thing. Like, the wedding was great, but surprising everybody afterwards was awesome. And then, Tim left, he got deployed, and then he came back a year later, and we had the biggest reception that I could have ever dreamed for us. It was at a winery, and there were fireworks, there were donuts, open bar. It was great. It was fantastic. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the story. If you're not married and you're kind of on this journey and trying to decide for yourself if this is right for you and your partner, I hope this gave you a little bit of insight. If you know somebody who has eloped, or if you've eloped before, let me know in the comments. I love hearing people's unique stories, like how you met or how long you've been married, or I want to hear it. Share your stories. Put them in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy anniversary, Tim. I'll see you when you come home.